So I am joined today by Ann Pocock. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Emma. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. We're going to be talking today about leadership and leadership in a broader kind of holistic context as well, which I'm really interested to get into. But before we get into that, I'd love to understand a bit more about your career journey more broadly and how you got to where you are currently. Talk me
Yeah,
through it. Tell me the
yeah.
story.
Sure, Emma. Thank you. So I was formerly a marketing and communications director, and at the end of 2019, I stepped away from corporate life, and in 2020, I went out on my own and created my business Kinetic Effect, which at that time was a marketing strategy consultancy and exec leadership coaching business. And now it's primarily exec leadership coaching. And I work one on one with sort of mid career senior execs on their leadership development, whether that's both self leadership or leadership within an organisational context. And I also do team development work as well. With a background in positive psychology now, I weave that into all of my training and my coaching and with a strengths based lens. And I am really about helping leaders find more of themselves at work and being able to, weave that into showing up more meaningfully, purposefully, which is becoming more and more needed and desired right now. And so, my background of having worked in marketing comms for many years means I understand deeply what it's like for them on the inside because I was there too. And I was always a coach as a leader and didn't really have that role model frequently around me from other
Mhm.
leaders. And so I kind of felt my way through it as a leader and self taught in a way and had a few mentors around, which was great. And so then in 2020, I formally trained in something I had been wanting to do for probably about 10 years. And so I loved every minute of it and have done many courses and programs now. And it's such a joy to be, doing what is me. Yeah, which I hope to help other
Yeah.
people do in their work context as well. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that transition because I think often, and it's been true for me as well, like in hindsight, it sounds quite simple. I transitioned into working for myself and doing this and stepping away from,
Yeah.
something that at that point you've put, I don't know, 15, 20 years into.
Mhm.
Uh, Talk me through that. Like, what's going on in your head as that's happening? What are you saying to yourself? Like, what are the questions that you're asking yourself? Really interested to understand a bit more about that.
Great question. And you knew me back then as well when I
Yeah,
was
I
in the
did.
role in
Yeah.
corporate as well. So you know about the journey. I it wasn't linear. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And it took a long
They never
time.
are.
It took a long time to come to my own party. And when I arrived, my family, friends, mentors, even you said like, "Oh, hallelujah, you've finally made it. We've been here for a while." So I say to anyone that's embarking on big transformation, because that's what it was. It was in life and
Mm.
in work. Um, that it's all about the micro steps and the micro actions and just treating as much of it as you can as an experiment and being curious. And that seems to sort of lighten the load about the intensity you feel about the change. So for me, I got a redundancy at the end of 2019 and I wasn't surprised that it came about, but it happened a bit more quickly than I would have liked. And fortunately, I didn't have to rush into what was next. And so I was, the same thing had happened to me in 2017, 2016. So it wasn't my first rodeo, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess there's both sides to
Yeah,
that
yeah.
situation. When I stepped away, I did a bit of freelancing and consulting at that time as well. So I'd kind of tried it out a little bit. So then at the end of 2019, I didn't rush into anything. And I had a few jobs in the pipeline, either things that were advertised publicly or a couple of conversations going with other organizations where they were maybe trying to create something with me, and just some casual freelancing.
Hmm.
Then 2020 happened. And
Yes.
we all know how that went for the
Yes.
next couple of
A
years.
small spanner in the works.
Small spanner of the
Tiny.
world breaking,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Hard to believe that was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
We were in the trenches of it, definitely now.
Certainly were.
And so as crap as that was, like the jobs
Yeah.
dried up, the conversations slowed down, that worried me. And then the jobs that did continue, I seemed to keep getting in the last two for the jobs, and big jobs too, And at first I was taking that a bit hard, like what's wrong with me? Why can't I make it? Why aren't I enough? All of that
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
self-talk that I coach people through now.
Yeah.
One of the many things on the list of things that people come to work through. And once that happened a few times, I started to get the memo that
Yeah.
it's not meant for me. Like
Hmm.
there was so much uncertainty in the world at that time that it wasn't only me, but it wasn't meant to be for me. So that gave me a bit of a gift of time as well to finally go out and do some study formally in organizational exec leadership coaching. And so I studied a number of courses, particularly through IECL, which is a really well known coaching training organization, and studied positive psychology at uni while I was doing some marketing consulting and building up my coaching practice. So I had people who I was so grateful, so lucky, so grateful that people were happy to jump in and be paid guinea pigs, essentially,
Yeah.
or paying guinea pigs.
Yeah.
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 And so then as the year went on, I just found I was doing it more and more. And some really trusted people in my life said to me, why don't you formalize this? And I'd long been saying, no, no, that's not for me. That's for other people. Um, I think I'm just going to get another big gig and do that for a while and maybe I'll do it after. And then I go back to my initial point, to my long monologue here, where I said that it's about curiosity, being
Hmm.
experimenting, just action by action, and action builds confidence. Adam Grant talks about this all the time. And sure enough, I got to the point where I went, well, I'm actually already doing this. So
Yeah.
let's do it. And one of the big things that really helped me is not only the learning and the experimentation and just the trying it on, was having people in my network who were a couple or a few steps ahead of me for me to lean on. Um, and there were other solopreneurs, other coaches, or just building my network so that I had that vibration, I suppose,
Yeah.
around me. So sure enough, that was 2020. And I've had a few cycles even now of what my business is in that time. Probably not outwardly really obvious to anybody that checks out my website or my LinkedIn, but to me, it's definitely been,
Yeah.
game changing because of how I run it, who I work with, what I charge, what I offer, all of those kind of
Hmm.
things have cycled around. And I'm in one of those kind of big change seasons for myself again now. So yeah, it's a long-winded way to answer that question, but it is a
Not
long-winded
at
process
all.
for people. It's not
Well,
linear and it's not one and
absolutely.
done. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think it's really important to talk about it, because I think unless you've been through that, unless you've kind of been through that process, it's easy to assume from the outside that maybe it is simple and maybe it is linear and maybe it is about, making one decision and then all these things suddenly change for you. So I think it's really important to kind of tell that story. And very similar story for me as well, of you make these some smaller changes, you try something, you see what happens, and you don't have to have it all figured out from the first step. It, Actually, it's probably quite impossible to have it all figured out from the first step. It can just be, well, what happens if I do this? Or, what if I try something over here? And then over time that kind of builds and solidifies. And
Yeah.
the other thing, as you just said at the end there, is that process is never done. And similar to you, I'm kind of going through this a bit at the moment of it's never done. It's never kind of, this is the business, set it, forget it, and just do it. It's kind of
No,
constantly evolving and moving as you do as an individual. I
sure.
heard something years ago and I've since forgotten where I heard it, but it's really stuck with me and it's very relevant to what we're just saying, and that is that if you ever want to kind of supersize your own personal development, start your own business, because that business is actually a vehicle for your own personal development. And
It's a
I have
really good
found that to
point.
be very true.
Yeah, yeah, very much. I actually also quite often coach other solopreneurs. So I don't actively market it, but I love it when it comes my way. And I
Mm,
always have a couple on the go at once, and it really lights me up. And they come to me with, can you help me with my marketing? So they're either been in it a little while and need to just hone their brand positioning or messaging, or are starting out and need to do that from scratch. So I help them with their non-visual identity, so their brand strategy from a narrative perspective. What's
yeah.
their positioning? And I will advise them. I'll give them some tools and templates and then work with them on a brand blueprint and some messaging. And I'll also do some marketing coaching, basically, which is not like what leadership coaching is like as yourself. It's actually me giving them the how-tos in a way. But
Yeah.
then in equal parts, they'll often have, or I should say, they'll often have in equal parts sessions, which is around self leadership, which is helping them navigate the relentless change and uncertainty and fear
Yeah.
that comes up for them, the unknowns. And, this helps them with, clarity, self determination, agency, momentum,
Yeah.
hope building, all the good things from positive psychology that I can weave in. So I'm not only helping them build their business practically and logistically, but I'm also helping them show up in the world
Yeah.
and leading themselves and others in the best way possible. Yeah, and I love doing that with them as well.
I bet. Yeah. And I think as well, having gone through that yourself and continuing to go through that
Yeah.
yourself, it gives you such a unique insight to it.
Mm.
Slight tangent here, but you just touched on something which is something that's been in my mind for ages, and just wanted to highlight it there when you talk about the challenges of self-leadership, of having your own business and kind of starting to work for yourself. I've often thought that's one of the biggest challenges for people when they go through redundancy for the first time, is that they've never actually been responsible for their own time and their own activity in that way. I mean, of course, they are within a certain framework, but there is a framework.
Yep.
They've never had to kind of go, okay, I've got this big empty day in front of me. What are the activities that are actually important? What are the activities that are going to move the needle for me? Because I think
Hmm.
it's very easy to fill a day and feel like, oh, I filled my day. I'm busy. But
Mm.
if you haven't filled the day with activities that are actually moving you in the right direction, then it's actually not helping you. And
Yep.
just as you sort of talked about self-leadership there, it just reminded me of that, and something that's been in my mind for a long time, because I think the two things are actually quite similar, and the challenges of that, if you've never had to do that before,
Very
is
much.
really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much. And when people who are exploring going out on their own for the first time, they typically work as an independent contractor on a short-term
Mm,
contract. And
mm,
that gives them a bit of a taste of that dynamic of where they're advising into the organization, unless they are brought in on a contract to be like an employee
yeah. Yeah.
versus coming in to consult on a discrete project of work. And that helps them feel their way a little bit,
Yeah.
but not entirely, because they don't need to market themselves because they've already got the contract. They might
Yeah.
might be full time for 6 months, for example, but they will need to, manage their own tax and have an ABN and,
Mm,
and that kind of thing. But what that opportunity allows people to do is experiment with the subject matter that they might like to productize. So turning their
Mhm.
IP and their
Yeah.
work experience into some kind of service and productizing it.
Mm.
And that's the tricky bit. So you either get a coach who can help you to do that or fumble your way through it. But there are freelance communities around online
Yeah.
and in person everywhere that have like pretty guided processes of what to do. You know, I certainly did that starting out. I'm part of one now that I know has a new to gigging program that you do when you
Yeah.
become a member, and it has a gig matching component to it. So these contractors and coaches and consultants are all part of that. But the bigger part is the community that that brings, and then also
Mhm.
the program that they have of like helping new freelancers, new giggers, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's called Workling,
Okay.
Workling. Yeah, it's a pretty cool group.
Right. Yeah.
I would say that's is the best thing is find other people who are doing it or get a coach to help you because
Yeah.
right, mapping out your day can get pretty muddy, like when you're not quite clear on what your priorities are, if you don't have
Yeah.
a clear, discrete contract to go to and you're having to go out
Mm.
there and find the work yourself.
And it's so
Tricky.
easy to, the rabbit holes are everywhere of something that might feel important, and half a day goes by, and you think, did I
Yeah.
really just spend 4 hours on whatever that thing was? It's very easy to do, and
Yeah.
it's something I see all the time actually with my clients that have gone through redundancy and are trying to kind of figure that part of it out. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of
When
coaching clients at the moment, and one of them is who have recently experienced redundancy, one of them for the second time, but one of these clients is wanting to go out on their own, and so they're looking to work out what the space is for them,
Yeah,
for sure. Yep.
yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's actually a really good model. I've seen people do it really well, but I think exactly what you say, it is that, ironically, in my space, because I work with marketers, but it is the marketing and the sales bit that people find hard, because you're not marketing some product or service like you were before. You're now marketing and selling yourself, which is
Yep.
a completely different
It's so
kettle of
hard.
fish
I
and
I
feels
hate
very
marketing myself.
different. Yeah,
Totally. A
as does
conservative,
everyone, I think.
controversial piece of advice, I should say, is don't start with your
Yeah,
website. It is
yeah,
the biggest procrastination problem that you'll face is don't
yeah,
start with that. That will come. Initially, all you need is perhaps a PDF with what you can do for somebody. And it will always be just a series of discovery and curiosity conversations with people to
yeah.
find out what their needs are and their opportunities are. Next thing you know, you're putting a short proposal together, which is maybe something pretty in Canva or something in just in a Word document. That's all you need to start.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I
And
think
then
it's
you,
very easy to overcomplicate, isn't it?
yep, definitely.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and definitely that can be one of those rabbit holes that I mentioned before. Previously, you mentioned, and I just want to get the wording right of how you said it, because I loved the way you said it. It was something around bringing more of yourself to work. Is that how you said it? More of yourself
Mhm.
into the leadership
Yep.
role, and
Yes.
it's really interesting because it's one of the main reasons that I wanted to have this conversation with you on the podcast. As you mentioned before, we've known each other for, gosh, I don't know, 10 years or so,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
quite a long time, probably more time than we realize. And obviously followed your marketing journey and your business journey. And I noticed something on LinkedIn a little while ago, which really, really resonated with me, and I recommend that everyone go and follow Anne on LinkedIn because her posts are fantastic. But there was something about the way that you were talking and the language that you were using around leadership that I hadn't personally seen before. And I don't know what necessarily the correct terminology for it is, but it felt much more holistic. There was, I think you would even openly kind of talk about energy, which is something, again, I'm very interested in. So it really resonated with me. But
Mm.
I hadn't really seen anyone talk about leadership in that context before. And as I say, that was the main driver for wanting to have this conversation with you. So yeah, tell me a bit more, and tell me how that fits into what I also love around what you said, that bringing more of your, such an overused word, but quote unquote authentic self to
Yeah.
work, and not just being a corporate robot, but actually being a real human being.
Yeah, yeah. I love this topic. So it was always something that I felt like I was a bit of an odd one out the higher up I went at work, because I am an expressive person. I am very self-aware. I am aware of others, and my emotional frequency, I believe our emotional frequency impacts others. And we need to keep that in check as leaders.
Yeah.
It's not just about being a good leader cognitively or practically,
Mm.
it's about what are we embodying inside ourselves, because that oozes out.
Yeah.
Now, you may think, or people, I'm talking to the audience here, may think that that's all fluffy and unnecessary, but I'm seeing it more and more and more now, that people
Yeah.
want more from their work. They want more meaning, they want it to feel more purposeful. There's this recent research that's dropped by positive psychology expert Michelle McQuaid and her team on quiet cracking, as they've labeled it. And 1 in 3 workers in Australia are experiencing burnout or on the verge of burnout,
Wow.
and have expressed that they don't have, it's just slightly more than 1 in 3 actually, don't have an
That's
outlet.
a huge number.
Huge, huge.
Yeah.
And don't have an outlet to work on that. And some of the biggest factors contributing to that are having appropriate psychosocial safety measures in place in the workplace. And so people feel unsafe with their psychosocial safety. And also, another protective measure is around increasing emotional intelligence in the
Mm.
workplace. Now, emotional intelligence, you do need to merge feeling and thoughts for it to be applicable, and it can be learned. It's some people will have it more naturally than others, but if it's a growth area for you, great news, you can develop it. Okay? And there's tools to help you benchmark where you're at, and a coach can help you through that. But if you add another deeper layer, we all feel something inside of us, right? And we often feel it before we know what it is. So let's put that together. Let's give people, leaders, platforms to be able to do that, so that they're showing up more grounded and more purposefully, because we're also starved of connection right now because of the rapid influx of even more technology than we've ever seen before, and it's not going anywhere anytime
Yeah.
soon, right? Hybrid working or total remote working, and we're just experiencing so much disconnection. So we're actually craving being able to talk about how this is feeling for us. And there's also a big group of people, not just leaders, who feel something's a bit misaligned, it's a bit off, but aren't quite sure what. And by opening the dialogue and making these types of conversations safe about
Yeah.
how you're feeling, what energy you're receiving or you're putting out, helps to make for more psychologically safe workplaces. It's not the only contributing factor, but it's definitely one of the contributing factors to it. So I'm very passionate about helping leaders be more heart centered and human centric in their leadership. Yeah. Does that answer that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And just as you were talking there, I was thinking about is it Maya Angelou, the kind of ubiquitous thing now around, people forget what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And I think
Sure.
it is so true. And particularly in that sort of leadership dynamic, I think over the course of a career, we've probably all experienced both sides of that. We've probably experienced someone where you're just like, well, they're kind of saying the right things, but this just feels really off, and I just don't like it. And you can't necessarily articulate why, but to your point, you can feel it and you just know something's not right. And the opposite, where you've experienced someone who, I don't know, there is just that feeling of, maybe it's that you feel like they've got your back, or they're supporting you in a kind of a broader sense, that they're, wanting the best for you. Again, it's quite hard to articulate, but you know it when you feel it. And I think the same is true when people are going through an interview process. And something that I say all the time, and I've experienced myself and had, God, hundreds of conversations with people who have done the same thing, where they've tried to logic themselves out of how they were feeling. They felt something in an interview process, couldn't describe it, couldn't name it, couldn't articulate it. And as a result, kind of pushed it down and used logic. But, oh, it's a great brand. It's this, it's more money. It's the title that whatever, but
And
knew
I'll
in
just
their
say
hearts
that
of
I'm
hearts,
happy and this will be okay for
yeah,
me.
exactly.
It
But
oozes out of
knew
you.
it'll be fine. But 3 months later, they're on the phone, and almost always, in fact, not even almost always they say something along the lines of, I knew, I just didn't know what it was, and so I just went forward. And I think it's the same thing. It's the not giving sufficient weight to how something makes you feel. And I think particularly, sorry to repeat myself, but particularly because you often can't articulate what that thing is. So, maybe your partner or your friend or your recruiter is saying, oh, how was it? Tell me about it. And you can't name the thing that isn't right. So you perhaps kind of shy away from it. I've been in that scenario myself. As I say, I've had hundreds of conversations along that same scenario.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I see it all the time, experienced it
Mm,
myself, and it'll either ooze out of you in some way or the other energetically in the interview,
yeah,
and you'll not get the job because they've sensed something.
yeah,
And even they might not be able to articulate it, just other than they
yeah,
just felt awkward. That, there was something performative about what you were doing. And then you get the job, you've managed to fake it enough in the interview process, you get the job, and then you get on the inside and the grass is not greener. And that's because that candidate hasn't listened to their inner compass. And
yeah.
we are we're experiencing this super cycle of change at the moment. Again, this comes out of this Heart of Change research by Michelle McQuaid. And these are multiple forces of change, not happening in a linear way, but they're interconnected and they're endless. And organizations, so that's on a macro level. So,
Yeah.
globally, economically, geopolitically, etc.
It's everything, isn't it?
It's everything. The world
Literally
hey,
everything.
is heavy.
Yeah,
And then
it
within
is. Yeah.
organizations, there's rapid change. We're all kind of just winging it because no one has the answers for how all of this tech and tools is actually going to help us operationalize our businesses properly. And there's a lot of uncertainty with that and what's called these FUD moments, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And
I hadn't heard that before. That's cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a futurist, Amy Webb, that talks about this. And as a result, our nervous systems are in overdrive. And high functioning leaders operate like that all the time and are pretty good at managing their stress. But rest assured, it catches up with us. And we are in, like I said, a super cycle of change that is exponential and unprecedented, and it's taking a toll on us. Sorry to be a downer about it, but that's the reality. So as a result, we go into control mode. And what that means is that we're constantly in our heads. We're wearing the weight of the world here, and it's like we're a head without a body. So if we're actually and so energetically, that's coming across as forced and panicked and worried, and you get it, right? And if we take moments, micro moments, these aren't big moments. It could be a single coaching session. It could just be doing a short visualization, getting outside, putting your feet in the grass, drinking more water. Like there's big and small that you could do, but helping us bring us back down to our emotional centers to help us self-regulate. And that is one of the core characteristics of emotional intelligence, and being able to optimize your emotional frequency, aka this energy authentic self that we're talking about,
Mm.
in a leadership setting.
And I think you are seeing it more and more. And I've noticed it even just among, friendship group. I see it on LinkedIn in the type of posts people are writing. Certainly in my kind of broader network, I'm hearing more and more people talk about that, and not always using the burnout word, but
No.
certainly there's a sense of kind of overwhelm or low energy, something's off, I'm not quite sure what it is, I don't really feel myself, all of those types of phrases. And on the one hand, to your earlier point, it's great that people are being more open about that, because then you don't just think, oh, it's just me, I'm the only person that feels like that. It's clear that
No, because
there's a
we
lot
have
more people
historically
that feel
hidden this.
like
It's
that.
been seen as a
Yeah,
sign of weakness.
yeah,
Still
absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
Yep.
True. Yeah. But then I think the flip side of that is that you start to realize actually what a big issue it is. And to your 1 in 3 stat, like, yeah, even just in my own kind of small part of the world, I can see that is spot on. I see
Yeah.
that in my own
Yeah.
networks and my own
Yeah.
groups. Yeah.
Definitely. There's definitely more talk and more forums about it, which is wonderful to see. But we've got a way to go still. And unfortunately, organizations are in a difficult spot right now where they're needing to be financially very prudent. There's a lot of right sizing or downsizing going on. There's a lot of technological transformation, process improvement. So it's really focused on, you know, profit and process side of business, and the people
Yeah.
side has been deprioritized in the last couple of years. And I'm confident that that will come back because, I mean, it has to. In January this year, the World Economic Forum dropped its Future of Work or Future of Jobs report. And there's this really great quadrant of what jobs are in focus now. And then the top right is what jobs will be more in focus. And there's equal parts tech and people centric skills, human centered skills. So,
Yeah.
um, the the tech and the AI won't be able to do that for us. Not in the
No.
whole way. So it's a skill that you will need to learn as a leader to stay relevant and connected.
Yeah.
And we have more and more multi-generational workplaces, and the younger generations need this. That's what they,
Mm.
you know, it's part of their core DNA. And so, I work with some leaders at the older, more senior end as well, and they're talking about what do I need to do to feel better about what I do every day, because it's like, is this it? Like I've reached a point where, I'm not sure if this is enough for me. I've got the good job, I've got the title, I've got pretty good salary, all of that. But then they also go, I need to future proof myself to be able
Yeah.
to stay at this level. How do I stay relevant? Yeah.
Mm.
And this will be one of the ways to do that, is to grow their
Yeah,
emotional intelligence and become more aware of self and others.
it's something that I suppose in a slightly different context, but something that I've been saying over the last probably 6 months, as well as more of this kind of AI conversation comes through, and primarily speaking with marketers, and what does that mean for me? And the short answer is none of us actually know. We're all kind of making our best guesses at this stage, and it's not a space that I have any particular expertise in, but logically, as you say, there are things that AI will not be able to do, and they are those more human things. They are genuine creative thinking, not just synthesizing all the thinking that's already out there, genuine innovation and leadership. And even if the robots take over a lot of functions, there are still going to be people there. there
Mm.
are
Yeah,
there is going to need to be someone who is
for sure.
leading and steering strategy and all of those things. I
Yeah.
don't see that will go away.
We are human beings, not human doings, and we focus on the
Yeah.
doing. all the
all
time.
the time.
So let's bring more of the being into the workplace setting. And something I tend to say is let's build safety and comfortability in talking a bit more about our feelings at work. Now, I do not mean that being a therapy session, like there's a spectrum here of,
Yeah.
what is appropriate, but I feel really passionately that, and I see it working when it happens, that the benefits at a macro level in the organization around staff retention, productivity, leadership, succession, development, you get it. It is beneficial to the workplace and then also to the teams and the individuals because they can be more connected to themselves and each other
Yeah.
by learning these skills and creating a shared forum or a shared language around what the emotional culture of the organization is.
Yeah. And I think as well at the end of the day, I say authenticity is such an overused word, and I think it's been used so much that it's almost now got not a negative connotation, but there's a bit of a oh yeah that comes along that comes along with it. But just a realness
Yeah.
of it doesn't just need to be this like facade of just realness of I actually don't know what that is going to look like, but let's sit down and let's talk through
Oh
that
my
together.
gosh, I love
You know,
that. Let's say I don't know more often at
I don't
work.
know.
Like I talk
Yeah,
about this a lot. It's such a good point, Emma. Like, yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
And I think it's a bit of I don't know, is it conditioning that we're all just meant to kind of I've got all the answers. I know everything. I'm a leader, so I
Yeah,
couldn't
that's a badge of
possibly
honor.
say that. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
so interesting, isn't it, that actually the complete reverse is true from an energetic level because as the person on the receiving end, again, you might not be able to articulate it, but you feel it. You feel that that is completely disingenuous as opposed to someone just saying, "Yeah, I'm actually not sure how that is going to look. Let's figure it out together. Let's
Exactly. I was
work
about to
through
say,
that."
let's find out together. And that's so motivating and empowering for your people to hear that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
because we all are just people at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like we
It's
have that commonality. So yeah, it's
it's so
simple
interesting
in context, but complex in
in
practice. I
execution.
understand.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? That the concept is so simple of we are all just people. Let's cut the bullshit and actually just relate to each other in that way, which super simple to say that, super simple to kind of conceptualize that, but then the real world kind of practicality of that is obviously a lot more nuanced. But
Yeah. Yeah.
if someone's listening to this, and I hope they are thinking this, thinking, wow, this is so interesting, like this really resonates with me. I want to kind of explore more about this. I want to learn more. What what are the first steps? What would you suggest to someone that they do? Are there particular sources of information that you think are really
Mm,
useful? What steps can
mm.
someone take?
The simplest thing you can do, basic place to start, is to take a strengths-based approach. So if you don't know what your strengths are, and there's lots of tools that you can use, that's a really great way to get a little bit more data about yourself. So what do you enjoy doing? What makes you feel good? What lights you up? And if you can do more of that, then that is going to help you feel better and perform better. But you can use those strengths or those understanding of your strengths to spot what other people may or may not have themselves. And if you're interpreting, well, they're speaking in this way or they're performing in X way, and I'm doing it in this way, and it's feeling a bit off, like we're at odds with each other, there's some kind of tension, then you can go, well, maybe that's because my strength is in overdrive and they don't have that strength in the same way that I do. So we've got a mismatch going on. So that's a really basic thing you can do. And there's free tools available for you to do that, or you can get a strengths based coach to do that. So this is about getting more data on yourself, and there's emotional intelligence assessment tools that you can do as well, which can tell you, how you are to some of the main factors, which are things like self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal, so the relationships, your decision-making ability, and your stress management. They're sort of the core components of, the 2 or 3 main emotional intelligence assessments globally. And you can see where you are and see where your growth areas are. Perhaps you're in an organization where they're willing to do that for everybody, and you can look at it
Yeah.
at a team level as well. And I come back to my very earlier point at the beginning. It's being a little bit more curious about what you care about and finding ways to have a little bit more of that at work. And then if you're leading people, asking them the same thing and then giving them some opportunities to have some more of that as well. And sure enough, you'll be talking about how that makes you feel as well. So the conversations should be really developmental, both from a practical and a motivation and emotional intelligence perspective. And they're probably the simplest ways to start. And then you can do bigger pieces of work where you have one-on-one coaching, or you develop team programs where you create your own shared emotional culture charter, where you do, like I said, the team assessments, for example. It's just bit by bit creating spaces where people can talk about their experiences. But ground zero is usually coming from a strengths-based lens. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. The other thing that I think is really useful about that is that, and it's one of the plus sides of technology and the way that the internet has developed, that there is so much self-learning that's available to you. There is a lot of, free stuff out there that you can access, and awesome
There is.
if someone is able to either personally work with a coach, or their company is going to fund that. But if that's not possible, and obviously that's not going to be possible for everyone, there's still so much that you can do.
Oh,
It,
there
it
really
just
is.
takes the drive from the
Yep,
individual to
it
actually
does.
go out there and find it.
Yeah. The first place to start is get on the VIA website and do the values in
Hmm.
action strengths assessment or strengths profile. I would do those.
Right.
They're relatively simple enough, particularly the
Yeah.
VIA one, to interpret yourself. There are free versions. You won't get the full information. And then there's the more corporatized one like Gallup or Clifton Strengths Finders. But I I don't find that one looks at you as holistically as the other two. Yeah, and
Mm.
we're talking about a whole person here, not necessarily,
Yeah.
it's called strengths, but Gallup tends to be more of a set of skills rather
Yeah.
than values and strengths. And there's free values assessments as well. I was remiss in mentioning that. Um, and you can search for free online values assessments and assess what you think your values are. And gosh, if there's a misalignment in to your values
Mm.
to what you're experiencing in the workplace, well, there's your answer.
Yeah, you're
Um,
gonna feel that every day.
yeah, you are.
Yeah.
And it's going to take its toll, and
Yeah.
it chips away at us.
Yeah,
And
it does.
this is what I said. It causes us to come out of our body and go into our head, and our nervous systems dysregulate.
Mm. Yeah. Final question, Anne. It's always the final question here, and that is, what do you know now that you wish you knew then?
You can't logic your way out of misalignment.
Yes, that's a great one. Yeah.
It's not just in your head.
I'm
You
I'm
can't
laughing because it
project,
resonates. Yeah.
does it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't projectize your journey to alignment. There's definitely stepping stones, but so there's not an end point. And another thing I say is goals need to be adaptable. Like,
Mhm.
I was so trained, it was embedded that goals were smart, needed to be smart. And
Mm.
sometimes they do, sure. But
Yeah.
I really feel when it comes to your development, even as a leader and personally, that if you are being adaptable along the way and bringing in those things that you learn to work towards the intention that you have, the goal that you have, you're going to be far better placed to create sustainable change, positive change, than if you go, I'm going to achieve X in this time. And when you get there, it's usually never what we thought it was going to be like. And that's because we've beelined our way, we've stayed in our head along the way, and we've not looked at the cues and the data that we've been gathering, and the curveballs that we've
Yeah.
experienced along the way. Because that's the beauty of it. I was going to say that's the beauty of the journey, but I'm like, so naff to hear that. But it's true.
It's true. It's literally, as you were saying that, I was thinking in my head, it's the journey, not the destination, but it is.
It
Hence the name of the
really,
podcast.
really
It
is.
is so true. And I did that for, God, 20 years of just, goal, check, goal, check. And it was
And
just like a series of tick boxes. And you're surprised when you check them off and
yeah.
you
Well,
don't
because
do
at work we
anything
need
because
results.
they
You
don't
get a
mean
task, you do the
anything.
task, you perform the task. It needs to have a positive effect
Yeah.
on the organization. So we do tend to try and make it linear, but as we've talked about today, there's many goals and intentions of leaders today, or there should be, that are not just about the organizational performance and its bottom line. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those working towards those goals is not always linear. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Anne. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and
Thank
how, as I said
you.
before, have this type of conversation and kind of shine a light. I was going to say it's perhaps a bit cliche, but on these types of topics and highlight actually how integral and how important they are to everything, not just work, but everything.
It is. Yeah.
For people that have enjoyed what you've got to say and they want to follow along or get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that? Where should they go?
Cool. If you want to get a bit of a flavor of me, then check out my LinkedIn content and follow me there, or you
Which
can
is
reach out
great,
to
by the
me.
way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I enjoy doing it. I kind of try and speak about the real
Yeah,
realities of
yeah,
work and being a leader. So there's a few truth bombs in there, and try to be a bit cheeky and, um, poke at it a bit sometimes. Or come by my website, kineticeffect.co, and I'd be happy to have a chat with you, even if it's just to share experiences and get to know each other. So yeah, I invite anybody to create space to talk about this stuff if they want.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me. It's good to be back on it.
Very welcome.